Well, you probably heard it said, there's no point in keep doing what's wrong to hope that it comes right. If you've wandered from church to church and organisation to organisation and job to job and, goodness, wife to wife, keep doing the same thing. I mean, you're not getting the answer that way. You've learned by your experience. You don't have to keep experiencing it. You're going to go on forever finding this is the wrong way. You've got to choose something else. Even if you choose it at random, you've got to choose something else. And I mean, it might be better to not choose it at random. Choose something that, seems feasible, that might lead in the right direction. You've got some notion that the saint perhaps is the contemplative recluse. Well, try it. If it doesn't work out, you can do a U-turn, can't you? Well, usually you can, of some sort. God will make a way. You're going to trust him for it. Now, if you're not finding your God in churches, well, get out. Get out. You're here to find God. He does a greater thing in you than through you. I don't care what your mission is to the whole universe. You're not going to achieve it unless you've got God in the first place. He is your priority. You may have made people your priority. That won't get you far. It's God that's your priority, or you can't bless people unless you've got God right. And I don't mean you haven't got God right. I just mean that you're continually battering your head against a wall that's not moving. Perhaps you're not meant to go through that wall. Perhaps the wall's there for a very good reason. It's to keep you out. So you say, that's strange. Not a harmony here. I seek the harmony. I seek the continual presence of God, not this aggro and this stick and this preoccupation with struggling and striving with man. It might be time to go off along the beach. Now, I don't mean become a tramp. What's the difference between a tramp and, him that walks by the Ganges? I mean, it's a slim line in some ways. But I do mean that you shouldn't keep doing what you're finding does not work. When I chose to emigrate to New Zealand, for a person who's supposed to be an expert at decision-making in uncertainty, that seemed an extraordinary, major, potentially catastrophic step to be doing. This was no modification to the current way of living. This was going upside down to the other side of the world, from England to New Zealand. There were things that made it easy. Wife that loved me. No kids. That made it easier too, isn't it? We owned a house. House that was worth something. Happened to be in a posh area, although it was not a posh house. It's an in-terraced house, but sold it to a doctor who, would you believe it, a doctor? And I don't know his history, but I suspect he'd been defamed somewhere and was just happy to live modestly and start again. I'm not sure. I didn't know his background. But he liked the house. And in its tiny way it was pretty. And we'd put it right because we'd got a bit of money from hang on now. That's right, it was a rather longer pattern of events, and probably not worth going through them than that. But anyway, whatever. I came to New Zealand with a wife that loves me. Wonderful. And we were received as great people here. Academics from the real world over there in Europe somewhere, England. And, yeah. Was it a reversible step? Well, yes. I could just go home. The house was still in England, that we did own by then. We'd bought another house. Well, I could have returned to that. Carried on doing whatever we were doing in England, more or less, looking for such opportunities as exist. But I found didn't need to. God opened up astonishingly opportunities for us. More money than we'd ever had before by a mile. Just staggering. Good jobs, lovely home, fun of a new country, travel. It was like being a continual tourist for the first year. We were homeless in a sense for the first year, actually. We were just travelling from place to place because we were lecturing in 2 or 3 universities at the same time. Both of us. And paid a fortune. Kaleidoscope of new experiences. Thank you, Heavenly Father. What a blessing. How incredible. And gave me, of course, gave us a new country, new way of living. Made the right decision. To some extent we envisaged it. Yeah. I don't mean be reckless. I do mean be alive to what the options are. And consider them. The more you look at some options, the more they become feasible. It didn't seem likely we could get the points to come, to migrate to this country, New Zealand. It was very unlikely, that I could pass the medical. I had back trouble and varicose veins, and my eyesight's okay with glasses, but I do need glasses and so on. And no problem with the medical. Couldn't believe it. No problem with the points. They included as experience things I didn't dream they would give credit for. We'd been running a little business selling gifts in the UK, and I mean a little business, just the 2 of us, selling in hospitals and so on. And New Zealand counted that as relevant post-qualifying experience as economists. Couldn't believe it. Fortunately, I think they don't really understand what economic theory is about compared to running a market stall. But you see, God just blessed us everywhere we turned. People that helped us from nowhere. And I don't mean Christian people, just anybody. Just helpful, wonderful. God's hand was everywhere. Places we stayed, houses we bought, people we knew, courses that turned up. Even the bank was right. Really, fancy that. Even the bank was right. You felt like visiting dignitaries half the time. Okay, in many ways that was very worldly, wasn't it? But it was worldly with an awareness of God all the time. I don't mean we were hooked into some church or something. We definitely weren't. Hadn't occurred to us really to link it with some church. We'd had enough of churches in England. We'd battled away with the local insufferable posh church for, too long. Got absolutely nowhere. So I don't mean step away from God, of course, where you wouldn't want to. It's the very fact that you want to step closer to God that church is not working. Church is an organisation, Following Jesus is not that. Nothing to do with that. It was Paul's conception of the ideal. But then, with Jewish background training, what do you expect? A lot of good is done them too. What a tragic history. Sort of what you expect to come from worshipping a storm god. God of war, genocide, judgment, condemnation. I don't mean the Hebrew God is all bad. I really do feel it's the foundation for the New Testament. But in some ways it's a foundation of contrast. What happens when, without the Holy Spirit, you try and find the right way in the wrong world? The land of Canaan, if you like. You've come out of where you were, which was Persia, Babylon, really. And you've come into a wilderness of all sorts of uninviting locals, which was not our experience when we came to New Zealand. And God prospered us just like he prospered Abraham. Well, I've made it with, I made a massive step with a wife that loved me and some financial security behind us as regards at least a house we owned back in England. And we were well qualified, in a sense. And, well, it was a big step, but I'm now in a different circumstance. I do not have a property behind me, do not have finance. I've given it away. Yeah, I've managed it. I gave it away. It was easy, because I had enough for a good deposit, but I couldn't get a mortgage. I'm too old for a mortgage of any necessary size. And I didn't want it just sitting in the bank, dwindling away. So I gave it away to those that need it, as I saw it. And I don't mean the desperately poor. I do mean people that were in hard circumstances, but they weren't particularly the poverty among us. They were just the needs that arose at the time. And I don't have a wife now. I have a little girl, 5 day and nights a fortnight. My daughter, sweetheart. And I have to make provision to have her, of course. I've done that in the sense that I'm, like for instance now, renting in appropriate accommodation in some sense. And I'm finding, of course, that my path to God doesn't match well with any particular organization, any particular accepted spiritual or religious place. So I think I should recognize that. What's it like when you unload all these things again? I've done it in the past. It's not completely new to me. And you just rely on God. But the danger is, of course, you become a bit secular because you don't have enough good company. Now, you can find you haven't got enough good company in a church or in an organisation or whatever it is. spiritual body of some sort, you can find that membership is not half as commendable as it might have appeared at first glance, and that you can't follow God in the way that you wish to, and after a while you feel you must. So perhaps that will let me concentrate and focus on loving God the way I really want to love God. Not constantly pressured by a fellowship that doesn't really lead you the right way. And because of that, of course, you find that it's helping you to make the right decision, because they let you know after a while that they're not keen on you. They despise you, or they're jealous, envious. They've got grudges and hang-ups that you never thought they would have, and they start to display behaviour that you would have thought was, well, decidedly unchristian, shall we say, and so forth. In other words, I feel like the Eastern guy who his disciples said, "Oh, you're wonderful, you've given up all the material world for, the ascetic life," and he said, "Absolute rubbish. I gave up a few paltry benefits for eternal glory and life and enlightenment. Only a madman would choose otherwise." And I also feel that it's like another who was a very earnest following disciple of some guy, and someone said to him, "Oh, it's wonderful how you've given up everything to follow the path." And his reply was, "Oh, rubbish, it gave me up." There was nothing else. God presented me with Hobson's choices, this or nothing. It's just that this was right, because that's the way God had led me. Thank God. Do you see the catastrophes of life are so often a blessing? Okay, I don't mean pain and suffering catastrophes are a blessing in themselves. They're a great trial, aren't they? We choose to trust in God. And you may find you're facing something where you can't trust it to God. Okay, what are you going to do then? Well, I'll tell you what you should do, unless you've got a really clear option in mind that's likely to lead to happiness and joy, as opposed to despair. What you should do is just practice looking at everything that's good around you. The morning sunshine. Perhaps you've got reasonable health, or perhaps you've got a reasonable home, or perhaps you have reasonable security, or perhaps a fairly nice environment, or perhaps you've got a nice park you can walk in, and perhaps one or two people you know are nice. Whatsoever's good and lovely, think on these things, and you'll find a gratitude growing, thankfulness in your heart. And you will find that this gratitude transforms your whole outlook. You start to become hopeful, and in that hope there is both a joy and a peace. And you become more optimistic, more creative, more able to be loving and kind. You become more wonderful, and quite quickly, in fact, at an astonishing rate, it's cumulative and it escalates. And suddenly you find you're flying and you can scarcely believe it. God's done a wonderful thing in you. So, don't forget how to achieve that though, is to simply look at what is good. Thank God for it. You'll find a lot more that's good than you ever dreamt of. And your faith and hope and joy and love will escalate accordingly. That is my experience. Make it yours. Thank you, Dad.